Now in today's session, we have a really fantastic panel planned with some local tech leaders whose made in BC solutions are having an incredible impact across industries. Through their experience and insights, we hope you'll leave today's event with some great ideas of how you can harness technology as a competitive advantage. Now with all that, I'd like to introduce first our session moderator. Rob GOEHRING is the CEO and chairman of the board at SINGH Technologies. Great to have you here, Rob.
Fantastic. Thanks, Erica, and thanks everyone for joining. As Erica mentioned, we've got a great group. These fine gentlemen have amazing diverse backgrounds and have tremendous experience in the field. And competitive advantage through technology, of course, is of utmost interest and concern these days. And we hope to have a very lively, interesting discussion. So to kind of kick it off, let's quickly just kind of go around, and I'll ask everyone to quickly introduce themselves. Very quickly tell you what your company does and also what kind of customers you serve. And Bruce, maybe if you want to start first.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, BC Tech, and thanks, Rob, and looking forward to this really lively discussion. So my name is Bruce Key. I am the CEO at Launchpad Technologies. And what we do at Launchpad is that we enable organizations to automate and integrate your applications and workflows. What does that mean? CRMs, your customer information, your e-commerce, your finance, your operations, your floor manufacturing or IoT and equipment, logistics, and they all need to work in sync together these days. And the automation among those data and workflows is what we do. So the type of customers that we generally engage is quite diverse these days, and especially since the pandemic. I think every business is a technology business. So we work with manufacturing, lumber, companies like General Motors, the subdivision of GM that is running called Cruise, that's running the self-driving vehicle fleets, to Splunk, SaaS or Salesforce, to Silicon Valley Bank. That it really crossed the different industry verticals, because everyone is needing automation now to run their bench strength and use technology and automation as a advantage. So hopefully that makes sense, and looking forward to listening to the other panels.
Perfect. Thanks very much. Thomas, how about you?
Excellent. Well, thank you for having me. There's a few different startups that I've been a part of. One of them was YummyWeb, online food ordering. We all know that now with COVID. We sold the company, YummyWeb and OfficeFood.com, over to Just Eat. After that, I was part of Clevest. Clevest is a workforce management company, primarily used for utilities. We grew it up to be about 150 engineers out in Richmond, and we sold it to IFS in Sweden. They provide automation. I'm also on a board of directors for a few other software and hardware manufacturing companies that help automation to a variety of industries, including Rainforest Automation that provides energy management, and now also pivoting into electric vehicles. I'm also part of the board at Coronex, which provides communications through power lines. Talius, which provides hurricane speed shutters, and also Powell River Cannabis Hydroponics. So that's a little bit about me. Thank you.
Very cool. And a great transition into AMAR, perhaps, with some of the last bit there.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So yeah, I'm Amar Singh, CEO and co-founder of Elevated Signals. My background is in controlled environment, research, agriculture, environment, sustainability, water engineering. And what we've done is brought that mindset to help transform bioproduct manufacturing. Started a company while I was in grad school at UBC in 2016, founded that here in Vancouver. We were funded by many awesome investors in the Vancouver area, and we've been growing this company to solve some of the supply chain issues, regulatory issues, and just general performance for agriculture. And we'll be transitioning that to a variety of bioproducts. But we initially started out helping with the burgeoning cannabis industry, which has a large footprint that was rapidly growing in a federally regulated market without a lot of tools to assist it. And so we saw that as a greenfield opportunity to come in and help. And the main challenges that we're working with producers on today are helping them with granular inventory and cost accounting, digitization of batch records to meet their Health Canada regulatory requirements, as well as just their own process improvement. and environmental monitoring all in one package, which is hard to do and hasn't been quite put together in the way that we've done it for the Canadian market. But Canada also serves as a great test bed as these types of I guess industries evolve around the world. So we're now in the United States, in the California market, Australia, Europe as well. But we'll be, using this as an area to innovate and then take that into other areas like vertical farming in the near future. So looking forward to talking more about that as we go.
Perfect. Thanks. And last but definitely not least, Peter.
Thanks so much. Well, hey, it's wonderful to be amongst such wonderful professionals as AMAR, Bruce, and Thomas here, and of course yourself there, Rob. So my name is Peter Roberts. I work for a German software company called SAP, global company, 105,000 people. We've actually got just around 1,000 people based here in Vancouver, and it's a pretty major kind of development and go-to-market location for us. SAP is present in 5 main categories: human experience management, customer experience management, procurement. We also have a technology platform business, and we have a business that I'm deeply involved in around enterprise resource planning, ERP. So in my role, I have a global role. I lead our customer success practice globally for the ERP business, which includes finance, supply chain, and also our managed service kind of outsource hosting business. My team works with about 7,500 customers globally across 27 different industries. For myself, though, with my background, I come out of the mining industry. I've been with SAP for 16 years, but I tend to work with clients in mining, energy, forestry, agriculture, chemicals, which is kind of my sweet spot. So looking forward to the discussion today.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. And just before we get into the rest of the questions here, we are hoping to have some time at the end for Q&A from the audience. There is the chat section in the Zoom meeting. You can drop your questions in there, and we'll do our best to kind of peruse through them and pull them up towards the end. So great. Well, again, let's dive in. I think what we'll kick off with is, from everyone's perspective here, we really want to start at the top level. What do you see as sort of the key innovations in technology that can be applied to non-tech sectors like mining, forestry, manufacturing, and others? And on that one, let's maybe start off with Thomas.
Excellent. Well, there are many benefits. I think that if you can't measure it, you can't improve. So measurement is important in any industry. Many times industries are thinking, well, I already have sunk costs, so therefore I can't possibly, shave effort or cost that way, but you can. For example, reducing overtime, focusing on a variety of efficiency metrics. Do I have the right person with the right skills, the right certifications, the right availability, the right tools, the right parts? And if you take into consideration all of those attributes, you can find a more efficient way of distributing your workforce to attack the problems that they need to be working on. Also, an interesting one is compliance, and think of it as liability. You know that a couple of utilities in California were on the verge of bankruptcy because they could not prove that they were in fact doing the right kind of maintenance on their power lines, which then caused fires. So it's not about preventing things as much as it is also making sure that you're doing the best that you can, and as Ted Lasso would say, being the best version of yourself. So now it's the other one is CO2 emissions. If you have less travel time, and if you have less repetitions because I arrived, I didn't have the right skills, or I needed someone else to do something before I got there, those are all elements that contribute towards more travel, more CO2 emissions. So there's also an opportunity to reduce and be part of our green future together.
Very
now,
cool.
It's not all great. There's lots of problems. And I know that this question was framed as a positive question. I'll go a little negative on you here and say, you know what, it's hard. It's super hard because you have integrations, you have customization, and those really disrupt making this and implementing these changes in an effective way. So ask your vendors, what's your sweet spot? It's kind of like hiring an employee. They could do anything. They're smart people, they could do anything. But what are they really passionate about? And so what is your vendor really, what's their sweet spot? What's yours? Merge those two together and things will go a lot better for you. Thank you.
Very cool. Yeah, and definitely, we're seeing as technology people, integration is a huge issue. And of course, so Peter, maybe we'll turn to you, because definitely on ERP, SAP, that's what you guys do. You deal with massive sets of systems and pulling data together from things that have never talked together before. So what are your thoughts?
Absolutely. So, ERP is a really interesting space. SAP invented the category of ERP 50 years ago. It's our 50th birthday as a company this year. And, we're really going kind of just through the third major revolution of the category of ERP right now. And that revolution is leading us to some really interesting kind of competitive outcomes. And this is irrespective of you're running an SAP system or an Oracle system or a Microsoft system or any of the other competitors there. By its very nature, ERP is a big and broad and cross-functional, and that is due to the number of integrations that are run, the number of interfaces that are run. It's really challenging to try and navigate a broad-scale revolution in your ERP space. So for us, I think as we go through this revolution, there are two pieces to it. Number one is the journey to ERP cloud, be that a full multi-tenant public cloud environment, and we'll talk a little bit later around why some organizations are going down that route, or the journey to a clean core. So actually trying to lower your total cost of ownership on the ERP space and execute your differentiating processes outside of the ERP, leveraging technologies from other vendors, or of course from us as well. I think the outcome for customers, the outcome for organizations, number one is about focus, okay? Making sure that you're spending money on practices and processes that are delivering value to you. Number two, margin. Number three, speed. Number four, being very focused on your competitive differentiation. And then number five, which I think is super relevant for any organization in the asset space, it's your license to operate and protecting that license to operate so you're not running afoul of the regulators.
That's great, thanks. Bruce, again, this is also your guys' domain, right? You skip across so many different interesting areas. What are your thoughts on sort of how we can bring innovation into some of these non-tech sectors?
Yeah, you're right, Rob. And, I think just the word technology innovation is very interesting to, first of all, define. I think technology innovation prior to COVID, or just a few years ago, if we're talking to the CIOs and CTOs of our partners and customers organizations, and it's, oh yeah, we're innovating. However, at the moment, I think every individual that we talk to it's not about innovation anymore. It's about, we need to get it done now. We need to have our solutions in place. We need to have our technology gaps and our roadmaps all laid out and start executing on that, if not 3 months ago. So I think the term technology innovation really implies a couple of things here to the conversation. One is there's a technology innovation. There's so many companies like AMAR's, Thomas's, and SAP, Peter, is that we are taking on those innovation, thought leadership, and really driving solutions out into the market. Now the question becomes in the organizations that really need those solutions to adopt them. And it's not about coming up with new innovations, but finding ways that can plug those what's available out there into your organization, but in also a way, like Thomas said, we're at Launchpad, we're working with, say, a local lumber company that's been around for 30, 40 years, and there's tons of sunken costs and assets, lumber yards up in north on the island, and there's a huge amount of fixed assets and software assets put in. But in order for you to extract that efficiency, increase your ROI, especially with all the logistics issues that's happening today, it's about finding that innovation on the market, but turning that into your competitive advantage and leveraging what's out there and apply that, but also in a way that's not throwing your baby out with the bathwater, because not all systems, we have worked with SAP systems in very varying degrees of places and shapes and sizes. Even some of them were from 15 years ago that still sits on a mainframe somewhere in Illinois. But the data is extremely critical to the operation of our client organization that runs it. But in order for modernization on that version of the SAP, it's about how to get the data out, and understanding, what other systems in your peripheral, say if you got your brand new cloud hosted CRM system that needs to, consume that data, that needs to be giving you the customer 360 so that you can understand your customer better. And then in your manufacturing floor, knowing what inputs and outputs are coming out and automating that downstream to your logistics and shipping. So look forward to sharing some examples today, when it's my turn later.
Cool. Yeah, these transformation projects are hard, and in particular in industries that have not been tech first. Sometimes they feel like a lot more work than they should be, but the benefits are paid in dividends down the road. So Amar, how about you? You guys, you're in a very interesting emerging space in many, many ways. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've got some comments that hopefully play well off of the other panelists' comments, because I think it all ties together. As a startup, we're obviously trying to disrupt and innovate and bring new user experiences to market with latest tech stacks, but we have to stand on the shoulders of giants. Our large and medium, all our customers use other pieces of technology, and so we have to integrate with those and feed data where it makes sense. And we can provide value in certain areas. For example, we've got Peter here at SAP, we integrate with ERP systems, but what can we do to improve the user experience? What can I do to get better data into Peter's systems where they may be needing that information to run cost models and run projections and so on? But what happens is you've got an ERP system at the top layer, and then you've got all this stuff that's happening on the shop floor of a manufacturing facility or a farming operation. And the key is to try to get that data into the system. And that data is the whole point of this is what's the competitive advantage and how can we run our businesses more effectively? We can do that by having better visibility into everything that's happening in our organization. And right now, I can tell you in the industries that we play in now, and I've worked in construction and all sorts of different industries, there's a lot of information that is still being tracked on paper, spreadsheets, whiteboards, clipboards. So we're in this era now where digital transformation can happen, but there's still a lot of work to be done. So what we're trying to do is improve the user experience where you can have anyone in the facility get that information into your piece of technology, into the database, and then it can communicate with other parts of the system. You can go into the ERP so that your CFO can have better insights into profitability, cost of goods sold, really getting granular cost of goods sold, where you're not just well, here's all the stuff that we bought and here's all the stuff that we sold or that came out of the factory. It's where are the costs, where are the bottlenecks, where are the hot spots in the facility that we can actually drill into and create automation and optimizations. That's high level. I just wanted to give a couple of quick examples of customers that we have where they've had experiences with this. And one was before COVID, we were working with a large scale greenhouse here in the Greater Vancouver area. It's over 1 million square feet. And they were, you have to keep very detailed batch records. They're doing this on paper. We were working on deploying this so that they could go fully digital. And then this was late 2019. Fortunately, we deployed in February of 2020, if you all remember what happened right after that. So they were just very grateful that we were able to deploy, because previously they would literally have QA staff that would be riding bicycles down corridors to pick up pieces of paper that staff in the greenhouses were writing down, here's what we did from a regulatory perspective. That also impacts finance. We were, moving these plants around. And so that was all on paper. We were able to transform that or make it so it was fully digital. So the QA teams could be working from home, as we all were, and still see what was going on. The skeleton crews on site could still be doing their work, creating products, releasing products, and just keeping that supply chain flowing. So if you're still in a paper environment and you're wondering if you should switch to digital, that's just one example of how, that. And then the QAs aren't riding on bicycles even after COVID. You don't have to go. You can have your fitness in your spare time instead of during your work time, and then those minds can then be freed up to innovate and improve performance and quality.
Very cool. That's timing and being prepared are some of the important things. That's a good example. To that end, and you mentioned competitive advantage earlier. Going around the group, let's talk about that a bit. How can technology deliver a competitive advantage, and maybe talk about this in context with a customer example, and maybe Peter, if you can kick us off.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much, Rob. So, listening to the colleagues on the call here, I think there's a lot of desire in this panel to be able to answer the so what question. So what technology? Why do we have it? What means does it serve? What purpose does it serve? What end is created? And I think historically, technology and the enterprise architecture that we have, that technology is a part of, in some cases, especially in asset-centric environments in manufacturing, has sometimes been a bit of a barrier to executing the strategy rather than being a complement to executing the strategy. Certainly in the ERP space, very focused around the needs of the CFO and what is required to be able to report out to the regulatory markets. So for us, I think the big so what is being able to take technology and be able to take that enterprise architecture and establishes as a driver for strategy, as a real complement to strategy. As I talked about before, I mean, we've got two major trends. Number one is the journey to cloud ERP and the journey to a clean core. Okay, and there's some rationale around that. And then the second is the evolution of software as a service into what we're seeing a huge demand for is business transformation as a service. Really start to evolve the thinking of how we leverage technology. So in terms of the first piece, and I'll use a customer example to talk about this one. So the customer it's a large scale oil and gas or energy customer. They're upstream and downstream. They're in both the traditional carbon-based market, but they're also deeply involved in next generation renewables. They are multi-jurisdiction, so multi-country. They've got multiple operations, all sorts of sizes, from small-scale wellheads to kind of large-scale distribution operations, and all various sizes. They're also incredibly acquisitive, and they also kind of acquire and divest at a pretty rapid rate. That's fundamental to their corporate strategy. So for them, the journey to cloud ERP has been fundamental to being able to execute their strategy as a business. And actually, they've got their stated technology strategies around having a hybrid architecture. So they are moving into private managed cloud ERP for their headquarters, for their major operations, and for their operations that have very specific, very unique requirements, regulatory requirements in general. The advantage of that private managed cloud landscape is that they can keep differentiating processes within what they control on the stack that they control. At the same time, and this is where the hybrid architecture comes in, is for their acquired entities where speed to integration is critical, for their new technology entities where speed to consolidation is critical, and for their less complex, less regulatory heavy environments where TCO is critical, is that they're moving those operations into a public cloud architecture. So high agility, TCO and speed is more important to them than controlling the differentiating processes. So that's kind of a really interesting, and I think probably in the last 12 to 15 month example of where we see big industrials leveraging technology to support strategy through a hybrid landscape, hybrid architecture. The other piece, which is around the movement of SaaS, so traditional cloud-based software as a service architectures, into business transformation as a service. And I think many folks would have seen the explosion in the market of automated process optimization, RPA type of technologies, blockchain type of technologies, data mining, etc. We see this with organizations at all sorts of scales, in particular organizations that are running a cloud ERP where they're able to get very quickly inside the ERP, have a look at the data they're running, have a look at the way that their processes are being executed, and leveraging those processes, particularly in non-differentiating processes like accounts payable, for example, that don't create that competitive advantage, and try and drive simplicity, best practice, streamlining in those processes. And of course, that creates a margin impact for them, which is hyper important.
Yeah, I mean, what better measurement of competitive advantage than having a margin improvement? So that's fantastic. Amar, maybe back to you on, you gave a great customer example, but do you have another customer example or some way you've been able to impact one of your clients' competitive advantage through deployment of your technology?
Yeah, absolutely. And just building on what Peter said there, it's like, okay, moving from just data capture to data analytics and understanding more about where you can drive efficiencies and so on. So like one example is, well, okay, first I'm going to build off my previous example about being able to do more with not necessarily less staff, but not have to hire staff to do menial, like repetitive labor. You've got like PhDs in these facilities that are doing things that can be automated. So what we want to do is automate those things, let the robots do what they do best so that the humans and the human brain can do what it does best, which is innovate and think critically. So that's what we're trying to do. Another example of another greenhouse we're working with in Delta as well, that's over 100,000 square feet. So not on the scale of that 1,000,000 square foot facility I was talking about earlier, but they told us they were able to save over $500,000 a year in just personnel fees. And, you know, do the math there, it's like, you know, 5 or 6 people that then, so we're not saying that like this is taking away jobs. It means that we're automating processes that allows these companies to scale up. So you maybe have one person doing the work of 5 people that were just essentially pulling together pieces of data, pulling together pieces of information from the shop floor and trying to communicate that up to management, trying to enter it into the ERP. But those brains can then be deployed to do the next thing, put the humans on data analytics. So a QA staff, instead of them assembling this batch record and hiring 4 more to do that, the next QAs are actually looking at process improvements. They're analyzing this data. So that's one example there where there's a direct cost impact and a freeing of the human mind to innovate. And then so the next thing we're doing is like, now that we've got this information, is what do you do with it? And just building on that, it's like revenue per square foot is one thing that comes up with our customers a lot. I'm not sure about other manufacturing industries, but in any bioproducts, like you've got a limited footprint to do what you're doing. And in our industry, it's like people don't have a great understanding of what are my best performing products, my best performing genetics, and so on. And they're trying to put this together, but just without having a digital framework to stitch it all together, it's very difficult. And so that's kind of the next step, is like improving that understanding of what are the products that are going to drive the most growth and competitive advantage.
Very cool. And certainly you touched on some, you know, automation and things. And I think we had this chat the other day. Automation for a long time was sort of sometimes, you know, brought together with the concept of people losing jobs. And what we're seeing is the opposite is happening, right? We're seeing that in a current market environment where people can't hire people, they're now, I do a lot of work in artificial intelligence. We come back and say, bring us more, you know, Peter mentioned RPA, robotic process automation, bring us more of this, because we cannot literally find people to do this work. And we want to put people on the more innovative, creative, you know, intelligent tasks. So I think it's flipped quite a bit in the last little while. You know, Thomas, you're working on and have purview into a variety of things. Would love to get your perspective on this as well.
Yeah, no, I think that if you do things well, then you'll get the opportunity to expand and do even more. I'll bore you with 4 kind of key metrics. I mean, it's, if you have more information, you'll have more efficiency, more reliability, more resiliency, and more predictability. Now, from more of a fun example, in my world, we decided to give folks out in the utilities where they are servicing and restoring power, and that we said, well, what kind of, instead of having pieces of paper, we would give them technology. And so we gave them laptops. And some of them said, you know what, I've never worked on laptops, and this is kind of challenging, and this is difficult, and so on. And they said, I actually have a phone. I have a smartphone. I'm actually pretty comfortable with it because I use it every day. We said, no, that's not for you, because, you know, you have those really big hands and big fingers with a little bit of grease underneath it, and you couldn't possibly use such a small device. And the eyesight, like, look how big it is and beautiful it is on a laptop. And so I think what it comes down to is asking your users, interacting with the users, inspiring your users, because sure, they could use both, and both can actually be the right answer in different situations. So that's kind of a customer example. If I pick a fun example, some of you may have been to Disneyland, although probably not recently. If you think of Disneyland versus another theme park close by, one of the experiences I had is that I was actually frustrated at the other theme park because I had to wait in lines. In Disneyland, I got this little ticket that told me to come back at a certain set time, at a certain set window, and all of a sudden the line was so much shorter. So what did I do? I went shopping. So I spent more money and I was happy in a happy place. So this is where technology, simple way of interacting with customers can actually create the desired effects with your customer base or with your workforce. And finally, I think it's all about inspiration. Technology can also be used to inspire. If you want your workforce and say, you know what, you've been doing it the same way for the last 20 years, 30 years, do it differently. It's a challenge to overcome. But if you inspire them and give them tools to where it's okay to fail, where the point isn't necessarily always efficiency, but inspiration to think different, to think bigger, and to improve, that is one way of challenging status quo. Thank you.
That's great. And yeah, I love the Disneyland example, because certainly, to bring it very close to, everyone here over the last challenging couple of years, as consumers and individuals, we've seen a lot of adoption of technology it has made our lives better. And you kind of wondered, why didn't we do it that way before? Everything from virtual doctor appointments and things, when that technology had existed for a long, long time, just there's no incentive to adopt it. There's hopefully some silver linings here coming out of the craziness of the last 2 years. But you've got so many. I'm sure you're probably swirling with examples because the diversity of people you work with. But we'll hand it to you.
Sounds good. Thanks. Yeah, I think the panelists ahead of me here probably has all the similar sound bites that we're seeing out there. I think how does technology deliver a competitive advantage? Today, in the market that we are in right now, I think if you're not thinking about technology and improvements on your organization, your operations, then really is a disadvantage already. So in that sense, usually we look at three things when it comes to organization, in our partner side of it or client side of it. So visibility is number one. So you cannot make decisions or informed thought process and designs without visibility. What does that mean? It's about data, so to Amar's point earlier on, right? It's about getting all the data from your factory floors, gathering the information and intelligence about who is your customer, how do they spend, what is their behavior, and then feeding that back into the systems that does predictions and forecasts and your manufacturing production levels, and then down to all the operational side of it, to logistics, to ensure that I'm sure that's a big topic these days, the supply chain issues that everyone is running into across the board. So as an example, we've been working with a vertically integrated customer. So they do design of their global footprint. They're vertically integrated, meaning that they design their own product, source the material, manufacture it, and also retail it. So from the design solution, you have the designer sitting, in North America, and the manufacturer is down in Asia Pacific. And then the customer main base is in North America and European markets. So now all of a sudden, we got a situation where, the coordination of those data, not only from an operational perspective, but also strategically, where do I predict my most purchased items going to go, right? And I have product SKU number one as SKU number two. How do I know where I should be shipping it to a distribution center so that smartly I can fulfill as much and maximize my ROI, the smart warehousing piece of that. So what we have seen is a holistic view, right? So the visibility part is key. There is gathering the customer data, understanding your customer 360, knowing who they are, where they are, how are they spending, and also the social listening part of that. How are they being influenced? Is it social media? What profile do they fit in? And the second part of that is scalability. So now using the same example. So I've got a warehouse distribution center here in the Lower Mainland in Abbotsford, another one in Oshawa in Ontario, and another one in North Carolina, and somewhere maybe in Arizona. So my goods are being shipped now using the visibility that I've got. Then I'm able to at least in an educated way or forecast, Rob, you guys are doing the AI, right? So the predictive analytics based on those data from the visibility portion of that Now I can run algorithms and automation to, predict that how much I am I should be shipping what portion of my SKU number 1 and 2 to each one of my 4 locations, so that in those geos that I'm supporting, that I'm not wasting resources. And number 3 is the ongoing sustainment. So in this process here is, as you can imagine, when we're working with a client, their global different operation chains and everything, you have to be able to create those automations in a way that is sustainable, because there are constant updates to how you are making your products, improvements that you're making, processes, updates in the different systems that's sustaining this operation. So, to Peter's point earlier on about, business transformation as a service, this is where I think back to the earlier question, Rob, that you had about technology innovation, leverage the existing thought leadership and products and services that's out there. I don't think any organization these days can, build that alone, right? So having an IT team, but essentially, you have to ask the question, am I a manufacturing business or am I a technology business, right? And some answer somewhere in between. So, so in this transition is always leveraging that. So that's kind of what we see out there, Rob.
Awesome. Thanks, Bruce. And I could probably sit here all day with you guys and ask you lots of good questions. We do, just for sake of time, we do actually have a great question from Cynthia at BCIT. So I'll read the question and Peter, maybe I'll start with you so you're prepping. Great question. What can post-secondary institutions do differently or do more of to support sector innovation? And this is a very important thing to BC Tech as an association. BC Tech has a stream of programs called Hyper Talent, which is all about, helping these kinds of things. But, Peter, I know you guys do a fantastic job of co-ops and recruiting and all these types of things. But what are your thoughts on how post-secondary can help support sector innovation?
Sure. Hey, thanks for that, Robin, and thanks, Cynthia, for the question. So as you mentioned, so we do a ton with UBC and with SFU. I personally hire straight out of generally the business school and the MBA school. We use it to re-engineer the talent profile that we've got, and we're kind of, I think, really using Vancouver as an incubator for talent on a global basis, which is really, really, really neat. I think job number 1 is being able to have people graduating out of these schools with a really strong sense of business experience. So having a healthy internship program, pushing companies like SAP and others to make sure that that internship program is returning value back to the individual as well, holding us accountable for delivering that. That's kind of point number 1. And then point number 2, which is something I'm very, very passionate about, is we need many, many, many more female and diverse talent in the tech sector. It's a critical element for us. It's part of our license to operate. It's part of our purpose and mission and mandate. So anything that you can do to kind of encourage females as they're going through secondary and post-secondary education, particularly in science, technology, engineering, and math, and then again, hold companies like SAP accountable for creating, that diverse and inclusive space for them to then be able to work in.
That's awesome. And I will give kudos as well for SAP, one of the organizations that globally has a neurodiverse hiring policy as well. Globally looking to hire, I think it's 1% of the workforce being neurodiverse, which is phenomenal. That's just a fantastic initiative. So, Thomas, maybe I'll put you on the spot and ask you your thoughts.
Sure. Absolutely. So, Peter had an excellent answer, so I won't, just support that answer. And kudos to BCIT and Cynthia. You guys are doing an awesome job over there. It's wonderful to see what you're doing. I think that if I look at inspiring students to experiment with new technology, maybe you can challenge us, the IT community, to give you software, hardware, things to play with for your students, and create a lab, an innovation lab, where they can go and, when the Google Glass came out, did you have a chance to play with it? It was expensive, it was hard to get, and how would you get your hands on it? So if you, however, create an innovation lab where you challenge us, the community, to give you tools for your students to experiment. That might be something fun and encouraging to them.
Awesome. And, Amar, maybe I'll ask you, because you're probably on this panel. You mentioned, starting your company in grad school in 2015, 2016. You're probably closest to have been most recently in post-secondary than perhaps the other distinguished gentlemen on the panel. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd love to add some quick thoughts. I realized I've graduated from 4 post-secondary institutions in Canada and had great experiences at all of them. Some involved co-op and internships. That's always important. The most recently at UBC. So I won't go into like what all these programs are. You can look them up, but we did the Lean Launchpad, which really started the idea. We did Hatch, which kind of took it to the next level. And then we did Creative Destruction Lab, which took us to the next level, but also introduced us to a lot of great investors and advisors that are part of our team and company right now. So I would say look at those models, very useful for us. And the other thing is, like, we're hiring right now and we're looking at co-op students as well. I would say if you could make it like really easy for us to find the co-op students and almost the click of a button, I say that tongue in cheek, but we're using like this hiring platform now where we can like scroll, look for senior developers, kind of click a few skills and it'll populate them. And then we can literally click request to interview them online and then have them start like the next week. With co-op, I got an email from someone from UVic earlier this week, and it just kind of appeared in my inbox, and we're interviewing them this afternoon. And maybe these systems exist and I just haven't seen them, but I think making it easier for us to find and interview and hire co-op students would be great.
Awesome. And Bruce, last but at least I know you guys probably hire a lot of co-ops and stuff as well.
So we have been blessed with a fast growth pace here at Launchpad, and I think similar to many of the tech companies in town, we're always on the hunt for talent. I think one of the areas that BC Tech, UBC, SFU, all the local schools that's supplying a lot of these talents and brain trust is that I think to Amar's point is that. I think if we're able to, just see more and be able to pick and, speed to the hire, that'll be fantastic. And secondly, we're always looking for, in our space, unfortunately, we're always looking for the seniors. So I think, from the BC Tech and, all the schools perspective, the programs, once we interview those students, the programs that, that allow students to have as much hands-on or even just experience that they have done on their own time, little projects they have created, they all count. It doesn't matter if it's a side project or supported somebody, and that you had an exposure to Node.js or Java or something that they have done, right? And it doesn't have to be just school textbook based. The hands-on stuff counts a lot in value when we do interviews with them. That'll be fantastic. I know that BCIT has been doing a fantastic job in churning out these skill sets, and we just want to see a lot more.
Awesome. Well, just looking at the time, we're going to do one rapid fire final little bit here. So I'm going to go around and we'll keep it real tight because we're getting close to lunchtime here, and we never want to stand between people on their lunch. So the last bit here is just, again, the sort of classic trends question. So what is everyone seeing as the most important, trends in terms of how technology can make an impact on some of these traditional industries? And again, I'll kind of go in that same order as last time. Peter, real quick, you, and then I'll go to Thomas, Amar, and Bruce.
Yeah, so number one, driving down the total cost of ownership. So spend money where money is going to return value. Put your application spend into differentiating processes and your technology and platform spend into mission critical processes. Number two, protect your license to operate, safety, sustainability, supply chain. And then number three, use technology for strategic fit and as a strategic competitive advantage, hybrid architectures, the ability to spin up and spin out, and also, really drive speed and agility in your landscape.
Awesome. Thank you. Thomas.
I'll keep it brief. I think when we're looking into the future, AR, VR, please invest there. Don't underestimate the changes and the benefits that has to offer in all sorts of different industries. And if you'd like ideas, I'm happy to share later. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And on that, in the traditional industries, like the digital twinning, all these things that's happening now, it's unbelievable, and it's changing the face of these things. Amar.
Yeah, I'll speak in, I guess, my industry vertical, but really, no pun intended, but like vertical farming, I think like we're at this critical point where we really need to start. I'm a big believer in the Peter Diamandis school of thought, where it's like exponential technologies are converging. We need to put them to use to solve some of the greatest challenges facing society and cities. We're in an urban center here, so what can we do better to today we were gonna talk more about supply chain risk, but I guess we didn't have time. But like we've experienced this, right, like in the past few years with COVID, with floods. What can we do to unlock technologies that help us diversify and create resilience within our supply chains locally? Vertical farming is just one example of that, where you can reclaim buildings within an urban center, employ all these technologies that all the panelists have been talking about: sensors, robotics, cloud computing, and so on, SaaS software. Put this in a facility that can then regenerate a part of a city. It can provide sustainable food, water for that local economy. And that's maybe a bit more long-term thinking, but I think these are the things that we need to start speeding up. And this is where the academic institutions like BCIT, UBC, SFU, and so on can really help get students starting to think about deploying those local ideas and thoughts to help our community right here.
Awesome. Thanks. And Bruce.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I think the word traditional industries, there's no such thing anymore. I think we have to think like a technology firm. We have to think like an innovation firm. So that it doesn't matter if you were in manufacturing, if you're in mining, forestry. What used to be defined as traditional is no longer traditional. There are elements of technology involved in every single aspect of it. Leverage what's out there and have a holistic view, generate visibility, and drive all of the technology forward.